Okay, hello, my name is Mariel Tuche, and today we'll talk about a culture bound syndrome called mal del ojo, or known as evil eye. Now, this is the content of the presentation, definition, origins, etiological theories, symptoms, treatment, cultural comparison, cultural significance, and psychological features. So now we start. Mal del ojo, evil eye, is a common belief in Latin America cultures. The superstition holds that a person can cause harm to others by looking at them with envy or malice, often resulting in illness or misfortune. The belief in mal del ojo dates back to ancient times and is still prevalent in many parts of Latin America today. Now, according to Martinez Cruz Perez Ramirez and Rosas Rosas, Mal del Ojo is a belief in Mexico with over 80% of the population believing in its existence. Now, the authors note that the belief is deeply rooted in Mexican culture, where it is often seen as a way to explain the unexpected illness or misfortunes. Now, in Mexican culture, there are different culture-bound syndromes that are more common. We have susto, we have empacho, and we have mal del ojo. There's a study from Reeser and Masur that shows that 70% of the parents of Mexican parents believe in mal del ojo, 64 in empacho, and 37 in susto. Now, the belief in mal del ojo is not limited only to Mexico. In the parts of Latin America, it is known by different names and different origins, and we will dive more into that. Now, the origins of mal del ojo. It is believed to be originated from Middle East, later expanding in all directions, and it is found in many cultures around the world, but most commonly associated with Mediterranean and Latino communities. But it is also found in African and Asian cultures. Now, an etiological theory coming from a social nature refers to the power to harm individuals through their gaze and is normally associated with feelings of envy or love. However, the individual, we will call him ojeador, can be unaware that he possesses ability in question, and even knowing it, you have it, you can harm without intention or experience negative feelings towards their victims. In the majority of the contexts in which the belief appears, envy is the most common, and in Latin American societies, the importance of envy coexists with the contents of humoral imbalance. Now, for symptoms of mal del ojo. The symptoms of mal del ojo can vary, and depending on the individual and the circumstances of the supposed curse, or we will call it gaze. Some common symptoms include headaches, fatigue, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, and loss of appetite. And others may experience anxiety, depression, or a general sense of malaise. The authors note that these symptoms can be difficult to diagnose. And also, in addition to physical symptoms, those who believe they have been affected with mal del ojo may also experience psychological distress. For example, they may feel anxious or paranoid or constantly looking over their shoulder for signs of impending doom. They may also feel a sense of shame or guilt, believing that they have done something bad to deserve this curse. Now, for treatment, like to ward off the effects of mal del ojo, many Latin American cultures have developed various rituals and practices. For example, people wear amulets, such as red bracelets or a necklace with a blue eye charm to protect themselves from the evil eye. Others may seek help from a traditional healer who perform cleansing or ritual or prescribe herbal remedies, like here, such as chamomile tea or rosemary to cleanse the body of negative energy. There's also a ritual called a limpia, which involves the use of eggs, candles, and a prayer to remove the curse, where they pretty much grab an egg, they rub it in all your body, they grab a glass of water, they crack the egg open after rubbing it in your body, and depending on the shape, the smell, the forms of the egg, you can see if it was a good limpia or a bad limpia. Now, as we were saying, some people wear amulets, etc., but there was a case study from Gallagher MR, REMRS. One participant stated that another way to prevent the evil eye was to place an ojo de venado, deer's eye, when going out in public. She stated that after her 2-year-old child had a bad episode with mal del ojo, her husband now makes sure she has her little bracelet on. The deer's eye is like a round seed about the size of a quarter. The color is dark brown with a black thick line that is around 3/4 of the edge of the seed. The deer's eyes are sold as part of a little like beaded bracelet with an image of a saint in the middle of the zip. The deer's eye also can be worn as part like of a pin. And other traditional Mexican protection would be red ribbons and garlic cloves, which are believed to ward off the negative effects of mal del ojo. And the use of the amulets can provide like a sense of control over the situation and may help reduce the feelings of anxiety or fear. Now, cultural significance. Mal del ojo has a significant cultural and social significance, like in many, many cultures. And it is of great cultural importance. Because it can influence the way people interact and relate to each other. For example, in many cultures, they believe that mal del ojo is common for people to avoid looking directly at each other, especially to babies and pregnant women that are the most vulnerable. This is for fear of transmitting the curse or the influence, the way that people interact with each other, and can affect the mental health of those who believe they have experienced it. Mal del ojo is also like a way of expressing cultural identity and values, and it is often passed down from generation to generation as part of a tradition. And despite the lack of scientific evidence to support the existence of evil eye, the belief remains that an important part for many cultures in Latin America and around the world. Now, a cultural comparison of mal del ojo. Well, as we mentioned before, it is found in many cultures around the world, but commonly associated with Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cultures. But in each culture, evil eye, mal del ojo, is believed to have different origins and causes. And in some cultures, mal del ojo is believed to be caused by envy or jealousy, while others is believed to be caused by like certain gestures, like praising someone too much or too much love or taking too much pictures. Um, but we will dive more into that in the next slide. So we will compare Latin America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. So in Latin America, as we have been mentioning, is very common in like indigenous culture, and it is believed that it can cause like a range of physical and psychological symptoms, including headaches, stomach pains, and anxiety. And the most common way to protect yourself, as we've mentioned, is like for amulets, charms, etc., etc. So now in Europe, the belief of mal del ojo goes way back to Greece and Rome, and it is still practiced, but it's not that common. Uh, it's not that common, like comparing it to Latin America. But for example, Europe, like in Italy, they called evil eye malocchio, and it is believed to cause infertility. This is something a little bit more different than in Latin America. And to protect themselves from the evil eye, Italians often wear a horned amulet called cornicello. So we can see it's like a little bit similar to Latin America, just different charms, but same with same amulets. Now for Asia, the concept of mal del ojo is associated like with different interpretations. And for example, in India is known as Nasar or Dristi, and it is believed to cause misfortune, disease, and even death. So a little bit more extreme, but similar to Latin America and Europe. And to protect themselves, they often use amulets or bracelets made of black dots or threads. So similar way to protect themselves as Latin America and Europe. And finally, Africa. They often believe it's associated with witchcraft. And in many African cultures, mal del ojo is believed to cause a range of physical and psychological symptoms, such as vomiting, diarrhea, and depression. So also pretty serious physical symptoms. And to protect themselves, they use amulets, charms such as shells or beads. So the only thing that changes between these four continents is pretty much the use of the amulets and some of the symptoms. But we can see that Africa and Asia is more known like from witchcraft in comparison to Latin America and Europe. Now, psychological features of evil eye. There's a theory that suggests that symptoms of mal del ojo are a result of psychological or emotional factors rather than a physical cause. This theory is supported by the fact that many of the symptoms of mal del ojo, such as headache, fatigue, and anxiety, are also common symptoms of stress and anxiety. One study conducted in Mexico found that individuals who believed that they had been affected by mal del ojo had higher levels of stress and anxiety compared to those who did not believe in this. And according to a work of Martinez Cruz Perez and Ramirez Rosas Rosas, the belief in the evil eye can cause anxiety, stress, and other psychological symptoms for those who believe they have experienced it. So the psychological features can be traced back to a concept of social comparison, which is the process of evaluating oneself in comparison to others. And in Mexican culture, social comparison plays like a very significant role in people's lives, particularly in rural areas, because the social hierarchies are more rigidly defined. When someone is perceived to be better or more successful than others, jealousy and envy can arise and leading to believe that a person is giving the el mal del ojo. This belief in mal del ojo can lead to a range of psychological responses in both giver and receiver of mal del ojo. The giver may experience feelings of guilt and shame for causing harm to another person, while the receiver feels anxious and paranoid about being targeted by others with mal del ojo. And in extreme cases, mal del ojo, fear, can cause to social isolation and avoidance of others. And finally, for closing info, well, the belief in mal del ojo is very present in many cultures, like we mentioned, and each culture has its interpretation and practices. Like in Latin America, the belief is deeply rooted in indigenous cultures, and in Europe, is associated with ancient beliefs and is less common. In Asia and Africa, the belief is often associated with witchcraft and etc., etc. Regardless of the region, the belief in mal del ojo demonstrates the importance of the cultural traditions and beliefs in shaping the way they perceive and protect themselves from these threats, as we can call them. More especially features of mal del ojo in Mexico are deeply rooted in social comparison, jealousy, and envy. The belief in mal del ojo can lead to a range of psychological responses, as we mentioned, including anxiety, guilt, etc., paranoia. The use of amulets and charms can provide a sense of control and help to reduce these feelings of anxiety. And the belief in mal del ojo can also have a cultural and social implications, reinforcing social hierarchies and creating a sense of community. Understanding the psychological features of mal del ojo is important for understanding Mexican culture, in this case, and the beliefs that shape other people's behaviors. Thank you. This is it. This is the reference, APA, and thank you.